Atheism is simply a lack of belief in God. That's all, quote unquote, the atheist is really committed to. It's also the exact position I hold. So I'm not dodging by saying that, but the atheist doesn't have to accept any other commitments, even on things like naturalism, nominalism, or otherwise, to justify his belief, which I think forms a pretty high barrier to prove a contradiction, which I think would be a necessary component to proving a belief irrational. Rationality in philosophy is known as belief guided by logic with evidence proportional to the belief. Something that is logically valid and supported by reasons proportional to the belief can be rationally justified with evidence. A belief is simply the state of accepting a proposition to be true, and justification can be understood as supported by reasons taken in favor of an action that make a proposition more likely true. So for a belief to be justified, you just have to accept it based on reasons that align with logic that have evidence and add some sort of truth value to it. If you lack a belief in God and can support it with an argument or reasons supported by an argument that is logically sound, then your belief is rational. Atheism does not need to be a comprehensive metaphysical system, which I think is really important. The concept of needing some ultimate grounding for things is pretty contested in philosophy anyway by the likes of Jessica Wilson and others, especially for things deemed necessary. I don't think a rational belief or necessary things really need grounding, or if it really would make sense to say that. Thus, for a belief to be rational, I think it just needs justification, or specifically here, lack of sufficient reasons to justify the absence of belief. I would say you're justified in believing sound arguments, therefore sound arguments can provide justifications for a belief. Sound arguments are valid arguments with true premises. I think the logical problem of evil presents a good reason for disbelief of classical conceptions of theism. I think arguments against creation from immutability, the plausibility of an infinite regress, are arguments that provide good reasons for withholding a belief. The fact alone that we have so many competing theories, many of which have less ontological commitments than theism, provide a good reason to withhold belief as well. The biggest point to remember is the atheist is not committed to anything that entails a contradiction, which makes his belief logically permissible, and a lack of belief needs minimal sufficient reasons to support it. A simple lack of evidence can suffice. I also believe the barrier is pretty easily cleared by sound arguments, unlike something like a positive belief in a supernatural being, which would have a higher bar to prove rational. I also think if an atheist can't justify a specific thing, it's not evidence that it's not at all possible, especially as much probably doesn't have direct relation to atheism. Like, you can't do X now, therefore you can never do X also doesn't logically follow. So I'm just not really convinced by arguments meant to show like a specific atheist can't account for a thing, therefore atheism can't account for a thing, therefore atheism false.
All right, perfect. Rounding out at just 2:55, cutting it close. Perfectly timed. Awesome. Well, thank you, Brandon, for that opening. And Tiffany, go ahead whenever. The clock is yours.
So I have never done anything like this before, and I'm a bit nervous. But I think you have used a lot of words and a lot of ways of justifying fence sitting. Now, there's nothing wrong with fence sitting per se, but fence sitting is basically taking your options that you know are there and just kind of removing responsibility from yourself from choosing. And I don't know philosophically if that's something we can do when we look at the evidence. The evidence is pretty strong, I would say, in favor of theism. I'm not talking about Christianity versus any other religion. I'm just talking about whether theism itself is more logically sound than, say, atheism. And fence sitting is, like I said, something you can do, but we do have a lot of reason, compelling arguments to believe in God, in a God versus no God. And for me, it goes to time. It's about time and time's beginning. So we have two options. Either time is eternal, time is infinite, it never starts, it never stops. Or time had a beginning. The problem with time being eternal is that there would be an infinite regression. If there was an infinite time, if you're there was an example I'm trying to remember. If you're waiting for a bus and the bus has infinite moments until it gets to you, it will never get to you. So think of that as the present moment. So time has to have a beginning. In order for it to have a beginning, it has to have a sufficient cause, a reason to happen. Everything went from a state of nothing to stuff, to physical things. And because time is a matter of change. So you have to have stuff, and then you have to have stuff move in relation to other things. And because of that, you need a reason for that to happen. It doesn't just happen. And you need a sufficient reason. You need something big enough to be able to cause all that, to have the power to cause all that, and to have the will. And when you look at what that sufficient cause needs to be, it starts to look a lot like the God that we claim is there. And so that's what I would say, is that you have to look at the philosophy behind this, and it's really compelling. Look at immaterial rules and how so material acts based on rules. We observe these rules, and when these rules, uh, a rule itself is not a physical thing. So right there, we're losing our ability to call ourselves materialists, because we can see these rules happen, but they do not have physicality. They are immaterial. So right now, the universe.
That's time.
Crud. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I want to let you finish your thought, but it
I was
kept
gonna say,
going.
I personally don't care if you want to finish. I personally don't care.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you have these rules, like I said, rules of the universe. We see them happening, and matter interacts with each other the way it does, and those rules can't themselves be material. They're not. And rules are something that come from a mind. They don't come just 'cause. And that is me wrapping up my thought.